Welcome, welcome. My name is Aoife, and I am a mind body coach, and I help highly sensitive women to get their lives back from all kinds of chronic, debilitating symptoms, anxiety, and depression. And today we have the beautiful Rachel Goffman, and she is a doctor of physical therapy and she's a pain coach. So she helps women to heal from chronic pelvic pain and so they can return to living full, empowered lives. And yeah, I'm just so delighted to have you here and excited about what we're going to talk about today and how we can support anyone listening to make any shifts that they can make to heal themselves or recover from whatever they're going through at the moment. So yeah, do you want to add anything to that, Rachel?
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. Um, Really, I'm just so happy to be here and talk about these really important topics. I know that I felt so alone on my journey when healing from chronic pelvic pain. And I think if I heard some more stories like this, it would have really supported me. So I just hope you find this a supportive conversation.
Yeah. Oh my God. And do you know what? It is so lonely when you're out there on your own. And I've been reflecting with clients recently that
Mm.
um I've just been taking a moment to realize that back in 2018, 2017, all the years before, I had not heard of one single person who had recovered from the long list of symptoms I had since I was a child. Not only
Mm.
had I not heard a recovery story, but I hadn't heard any clear explanations. So
Wow.
just taking a minute to consider how lucky we are to be you and I having this conversation about what we've been through and how we've overcome it. And then anyone else listening, just to drop into a bit of gratitude, like, wow, like I get to listen to some hope or inspiration or have an aha moment. Like it is a really great time to be alive in that sense.
Yes, I think the connections we're able to make these days is really something special. When I was first diagnosed and I first was starting my pelvic pain healing journey, I didn't have Instagram. I didn't have access to podcasts, or at least initially. And I really had a hard time finding this information. So I feel like now it's really so beautiful to see how many opportunities for learning are really out there. And I love that we're part of that process as well.
Totally. And so the flip side of that I do hear people come to and say is they're like, oh my God, there's just so much information now. And they don't know what expert to listen to or what coach to go through to or what tools to use. But what I love about what you share, Rachel, is you emphasize so much the self-compassion and I always say to people when they come to me with this kind of problem that they're overwhelmed with information and the different tools that most people are just saying the same thing, and they're just using a different recipe that they're just to deliver that and whatever suits you, resonates with you. Some people like tough love, or some people like to be handheld or whatever, and just
Yeah, yeah. I couldn't agree more. I think it absolutely can feel overwhelming when you think there's a right way. Part of the whole healing process is really kind of tuning into yourself and kind of trusting your inner guidance and sensing what is for you, what isn't for you, some discernment that happens. And part of that can also happen in deciding what you want to do, what's for you, what's not for you in your healing journey. And I totally agree in the end, everyone's kind of saying the same thing, which is we are trying to create a felt sense of safety. Your body is okay. It is responding to something that's very real. The pain is very real. And the way to really teach your nervous system how to heal this pain is to reduce fear and really get back to living your life on your own terms. That's a general message almost everyone is saying. Now, whether people are talking about more cognitive therapies or more somatic therapies or more meditation, or there's a gazillion tools that you can explore. And I love tools. I'm a big fan of tools. But I didn't have many tools when I was healing myself, when I was like my own patient, right, for myself. So I think that people can get really caught up in finding the right tool and the right method. And I think that can really stop people from taking action. It can be part of that kind of freeze response of overwhelm. And so what I often ask people is like, what's anything you could do right now that would feel 2% better? Anything, any thought, any action, anything is a step in the right direction, right? So kind of reducing it down from this overwhelming, I have to pick the right thing, to anything I choose is the right thing. And I can take the next step from there.
I love that so much. Because I was the same, right? I found the mind body connection, 100% all in. This makes sense. Duh. And then I was like, anyone out there? How do
Yeah.
I do this? Like, and so I kind of had to figure things out myself. But then I see that's still the path for lots of people, because you just kind of have to try on these different tools, try on a few different things. And there is such a desperation when you've been so taken out of the life by your symptoms and by your illness, and you've been dismissed so much in the different, maybe the medical system, and then you've been maybe feared, like a lot of fear has been instilled in you in other healing professions, because it was just a lack of information that was out there. So you're like worn out, and you're tired, and you're confused, and you just want the symptoms gone. So there can be that desperation, but it is a kind of like surrendering into the process, as annoying as that can sound. It's like,
I know no one likes to hear that.
no, but the only reason I know what really doesn't work for me in my own process is because I just did it. I just kind of did everything.
Yeah.
And so you are just trying it out. And I love what you said. It's just encouraging people to just try it, just do something. Because I do meet these people who have known about the mind body for far longer than I have. They've studied it, and they've learned it, and they know all the information. It's still very like cerebral and up here. But you do need to find someone or something. There is an action that needs to be taken at some point to kind of like, okay, how can I embody this?
And so I totally agree. And I see that all the time. And I feel like I think the thought that stops many people from embarking on the mind body approach, and certainly stopped me for a long time, is the worry that what if they're missing something physical, structural? With pelvic pain, I think uniquely pelvic pain, there are kind of fluctuating circumstances that could be always changing when it comes to a new infection or a new, like, yeah, really like a UTI or BV or an STI or something new and structural and physical that could be now creating these symptoms. So this constant fear of like, what if now it's something quote unquote real, right? And so I first want to validate that that's incredibly challenging, because I've literally been through that a million times. It is very, very hard to calm your brain when you're worried that there's something new that could be happening, even though you were assessed 2 weeks ago, right? So that's a very real thing to contend with. What I'll say though is you can still create a sense of safety and choose to get testing done. You can still calm yourself and choose to get testing done. You can still go out and have a time with your friend while you're treating an infection, right? So it's like there are so many ways that we can handle whatever is happening from a compassionate and loving place that's not in that fear spiral that many of us have all experienced before, right? So I just wanted to say that.
I love that. I totally agree. And for me, I have a completely different experience with the medical system now. I used to be like just so I would cry. I would just go to the doctor, and I would just cry because I was so confused. I was so overwhelmed, and no one could help me, and it was so distressing, and everything was so confusing, and I was getting inconsistency everywhere. Blah blah blah.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
But now I just love it. If I need the medical system, I just love it.
Yeah.
I know to go there for an antibiotic for an infection in my leg I got in Bali. I think I broke my toe, but they said it was sprained. But anyway, in
But it
Bali,
really, yeah.
I was like, there's no way it can be this bad. If it's just sprained, it's gotta be broken. Anyway, but I'm like, I just love the medical system now, because I know I'm coming from this informed place, and this like I know I just have this kind of like greater wisdom and greater confidence with my own health, and this sense of safety that you describe. And I'm so much more able to communicate with doctors as well,
Yeah.
like what's
Yeah.
really going on, because I'm just so clear on myself. And I think that just adds to this confidence. You know, you talk about getting women getting their empowered lives back, and I love this as well. And part of getting your life back is just getting your confidence in yourself back.
And I think getting your attention back and getting control of your, like, where you choose to direct your attention. Because what symptoms often do is steal your attention. They are like grabbing every thought, all of your energy, and it goes to thinking about symptoms, worrying about symptoms, managing symptoms, right? There's so much energy going out. There's nothing left over for what you value, who you value, what you want to do, right? So much of the process is really reallocating those resources. It is giving yourself more power to shift your attention. And it's not saying you're pushing symptoms away. Like, they get to be there. We get to have a relationship with them. We can talk about that later. But it's really about, how do I want to be in this moment? What do I want to do with my day? And it's a very hard thing to teach yourself when you have screaming, 8, 9, 10 out of 10 pain every day. And it's a process, which is why, like, so I didn't really have support. I didn't find mind body coaching. I didn't find any of that until after. And I so wish I had, because I think it's some of that aspect of co-regulation, of being with somebody who is not as scared as you, who isn't really scared for you at all. They're compassionate and they are caring and they understand and they're empathetic, but they are not in the fear with you. And having someone in that space, I think, is so incredibly powerful. And I've seen it in the work I do with my clients, and I've seen it in the work my colleagues do with their clients. I think that there is an aspect of that co-regulatory experience that is so impactful, because we know that we heal in community, right? And healing alone can feel like a big danger signal when you're constantly trying to regulate yourself when you are very dysregulated. So I think that's a resource that I'm so glad exists now. And there are folks like you, folks like me, and other providers and practitioners who are doing similar work.
I love that so much. Because I always like say to my clients, I'm like, you talk to me now about your symptoms. You don't talk to like your husband or your, whoever, because they, like what you're saying, they don't understand right now. And you come out at them maybe with like, I'm scared, and they're like, oh, I'm scared for you. And they're like, oh, should I be scared? Yeah, you're scared. And it's just like ping ping
Yeah.
ping ping ping.
Yeah, it's like ping-ponging fear back and forth. And then, like, oftentimes friends and family are like, should you try this doctor and this medication, and get you back into the medicalization of the symptoms, even though you know that mind body work is the way forward. It's really hard to stay on that path when you have no one in your corner who's agreeing with that, right? If everyone you speak to, clinicians included, because, right, most clinicians are not educated in this approach, it can be, you can feel like an idiot. You can feel like you're the crazy one for choosing to go down this path. And that can feel very, very, very hard.
Totally. And you know what I always say to my clients? I'm like, you're actually a genius. You're like, literally, you know, the way people think geniuses are weird. Like you're literally like, in 10, 15 years, this is gonna be just common talk. Everyone's gonna talk like this, your husband, your kids, your doctors, like everyone's just gonna talk like this. But right now you're like ahead of the curve. Like you're literally a genius. So you need to like hang with the other geniuses that are like figuring this out and talking about this until, and then in the future everyone else will catch up. But I like to flip that, right? Because it feels the other way around. It feels like you're, and that can add to that disempowerment. and that stress and that fear that maybe this is wrong, maybe this isn't working. So yeah, I just love that.
Yeah. And to me, there really is no downside to the mind body approach, right? So this is assuming that you've gone to the doctor, you have excluded possibilities of true harm, right? Of true infections or tumors or, injuries that require medical attention, right? There are truly things that happen to the body that do require medical treatment. And it is absolutely the first step that we do is make sure that you have done that, because that is very important. And once you've done that and gotten several opinions, I had to get, oh my God, probably like 10 or 12 opinions before I finally was like, okay, this isn't working for me, right? My body is quote unquote fine. I was given diagnoses such as vulvodynia, prenatal neuralgia, interstitial cystitis. So I had these like big, scary diagnoses that were kind of like, well, you're just going to have to live with this. Like, you can manage it. Here are options of these really scary injections and medications I didn't want to take. And I was like, so this is it? This is all you, but why is this happening? Right? No one could explain the why. All of the options for treatment were all temporary and expensive. And to me, were really scary. And at that point, I was like, okay, this is not working for me. I am open to looking at something differently, right? Like finding something different. But everyone gets there at different times. Some folks stay in the medical system for years, and just either haven't heard of the mind body approach or heard it and thought they were being medically gaslit and are being told that they're crazy. It's all in their heads. So I think it's so critically important to understand that, like, the mind body approach is science. It is saying that the brain is part of the body and the nervous system is what decides whether or not you have pain. And it is always scanning for danger. And if it thinks you're in danger, it can produce pain. And just understanding that whole like pain science, that was a very bare bones explanation, but knowing that danger signals can be either physical or emotional. They don't always have to mean something is actually physically wrong with you. And emotions matter. I think our society, I'm not sure how it is in Europe, you can tell me. But in the US, I think there's still this really big idea that like sit down, shut up, suck it up, don't feel your feelings don't matter. And I think that it's really harmful. And I think that the younger generations are a little bit more, I'm gonna say hip to, which makes it sound so old, but are more open to feeling their feelings and emotional discussions. But I think that's relatively new. Like, I'm a millennial. I think Gen Z is a little bit better than me, but like the younger folks are a little bit better about being aware of their feelings, and I'm really happy to see that. But many of us, at least I know as a millennial, like, we still kind of got that wisdom, the wisdom, quote unquote, of feelings don't matter, like turn it off and keep going. And that accumulated over time causes a lot of problems.
Love everything you shared. First of all, loved your simple explanation of the nervous system, the mind body connection. And for anyone who's listening who doesn't experience pain, that lit up nervous system, the nervous system is connected to every system in your body, right? So your endocrine system, if it's producing lots of cortisol, then your hormones are out, your immune system, all the systems. So like your skin is the biggest organ in your body. If you're stressed out, your skin, the pH, and acne, like, all it just is connected to so many things. I know some people are like, well, I don't get pain, how does it apply to me? And
And digestion too, right? Like the constipation and IBS and all of that. It's very, very connected.
connected to everything,
Yeah.
like literally. And then I love what you were sharing about the emotions, because when I flash back to being a teenager,
Mm.
like, I just want to hug that girl so much, because I was like feisty and tough and fighting with them because I was so sensitive, and I grew up, I'm so sensitive, like it's like next level. And I came into this world where sensitivity was weak, was not okay, and then on top of that, like emotions are not cool. And I'm like, well, I've got all the emotions and some, and I'm feeling everyone else's emotions. And so I really, from a very, very young age, just built these walls and these systems to try and like block all that out and numb all that out. And sure enough, from a really young age, I was getting mysterious, debilitating symptoms. My pains in my arms and legs, pains in my stomach, candida, digestive issues. I was even getting really high, dangerously high fevers that were landing me in hospital. And this is literally very real, very dangerous physical manifestation of someone who has come into a world that's saying, an emotional, energetic being that's told, see all that energy that is your life force energy, you better shut that down and lock it up and strap up your boots and pull up your socks and be a soldier and numb that shit. And confidence is looks this certain way. And I remember I was always attracted to like dudes and attracted to people who just to me seemed really confident, but they were just like extra good at like numbing. I was like, wow, they just like don't feel, and like they're not embarrassed by things. I just thought like that was like my life aspiration. Like that's the person I wanted to be, but like that's the person I was trying to be, and it was just making me sick.
I fully agree. I actually love that you speak about like highly sensitive people because that is something I only recently heard about, like maybe a year or two ago. And it's me to a T. I just had no idea there was like a label for it. And I was a really sensitive kid as well. I felt everyone's feelings, and always tried to protect people from their feelings. So that ends up in this pattern of people pleasing, right? And perfectionism and trying not to be a problem and suppressing your own needs so that like everyone else is happy because you feel so much for them. And I too, like looking back on my life, had, oh my gosh, so many mind body symptoms. I had terrible IBS. I had POTS. I had chronic migraines, had chronic fatigue. I had these bouts, and that it brought me to naturopaths and to all kinds of different like body doctors who gave me all these herbs, and nothing ever resolved long term from any of that. And in learning how to really connect with myself and to find the boundaries that are me, like it's a very strange thing. Somebody who isn't highly sensitive, they don't really understand. They're like, oh, you're you, they're them. And I'm like, I feel like I'm them, which is a really weird thing to explain to somebody who doesn't get it. And so just acknowledging and understanding that I had to put up these like emotional boundaries where it's like the separation of like self and other. And only then could I create like true boundaries, is first differentiating me from someone else. And I think that it's a lot of people who have mind body conditions have some level of extra sensitivity when it comes to that.
Definitely. And that was my path as well. As a kid, like I had a little brother born when I was 4 years old, and like I couldn't deal when he was crying and he was upset. Like I was just losing it. Like I just everything. And then later on in life, um, I was so sick and living in my parents' spare room, but I was still my mom would be super stressed about my granny. My granny was aging and had dementia, and I would like just go, okay, and I would be managing her, so I would be then over stretching myself to help my granny in ways that like because I was trying to manage my mom, and then it was just like you just end up in this big complicated web of trying to serve and trying to help and trying to manage everyone else, because you're just feeling everything for everyone, and you're like a natural server helper. You
Mhm.
have a greater wisdom, like you, or insight, like I believe that you can sense and feel more information from the world, so you can see solutions that other people aren't seeing. But when you don't have that emotional boundary in, then you're just like leaking it out, and it's real messy, and you're kind of stuck in different dynamics that are burning you out.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. Um, I think that also as women, I think that there's also the societal conditioning of self-sacrifice and pleasing others and not being a problem, right? And being deferential and just really suppressing yourself to fit in and to be liked. And there's that extra added layer of like affirming not being yourself and not feeling yourself and giving yourself to others without thinking of yourself. And to kind of unravel and come out of that patterning, the first step is awareness, right? And seeing how this is happening, who it's benefiting, right? And then deciding, okay, I do have to acknowledge that if I choose not to please everyone and not to try to be perfect and not to be, everyone's idea of like a good girl, right? I might lose some people in my life, right? I might lose friends or partners or family, right? And deciding like that must be okay because I'm sick, quite literally sick from trying to do it all for others. And if they don't want to be in my life when I start to take care of myself, then they are not meant to be in my life. And that's a really hard decision to make. But that I have found has been true for myself and for a lot of people in my life that have been doing this kind of work. Have you noticed that for yourself?
Absolutely. And to love everything you shared there. And first of all, the feminine wounding and the self-sacrificing is just it's next level when you start to bring awareness to it. And yeah, just seeing, I mean, I can see how much the expectations of me are totally different to the expectations of my brother, like in terms of like the caretaking in our family and all these different things. So really learning about that and speaking up to my family, I've had these like massive breakthroughs where like this like otherworldly wisdom just poured through me, and I was just like, I'm not doing this, I'm not da, da, da. And it wasn't coming from like this rage or this anger, it was just like this pure wisdom where people were just like, oh
Oh.
shit, like, oh damn, yeah, you better just like, you don't have to do that anymore. And they were just like, oh my God, because everyone's just going along with the same system. Yeah, the women will take care. Like little girls will be like, come in and hug your auntie and say hi to your auntie and look after your granny, and oh, the boys are out playing, and it's just a system. And when you start to break it, it can really serve everyone, and it can help the boys to step up in ways that's empowering for them, and it can really support the women to thrive better. And then the other thing that you were sharing is just so powerful because this can also be part of a process where I feel that it can trigger like symptoms again, like because you start to say no when you have always said yes, and whole entire relationships have depended on a certain type of relating, and you start to relate a little bit differently, and that we're communal beings, we are love beings, we thrive on connection, and when you start to be in this process, and that's why having a guide and a helper or group or whoever is so vital, because when you do start to act differently in your relationships and in the world, it can be kind of scary, and you're not sure yet, this is uncharted territory, what's going to happen. And I have certainly had like like whole symptoms arise like all over my body when I've like just stopped doing something I've always done and done something else, and I'm like, what's going to happen? Is all the love going to go away? I'm going to lose all my relationships or whatever. And then what it the truth is that the people who are so dear to me, my relationship has just got so much deeper and so much richer and so much more tender and more beautiful, and that is the result of this process, truly.
That's beautiful. I'm so glad you had that experience. I have to say, not everyone does. There are some folks in some families where when you start saying no and start putting up boundaries and not being the doormat, people get mad and people think that you are entitled or you are ungrateful or you are just a bad person. And I just want to validate that's incredibly painful. I'm sorry for anybody who has to go through that. That was not my personal experience. I just have had clients who've had struggled with that. And that's very, very, very real. And what I'll say is so much of this journey is having your own back and of being your own protector. So your body doesn't have to do it for you, right? You are using your voice and finding your voice to speak so your body can quiet down, right? So at some point, there sometimes comes this decision-making process of how can I be with myself and care for myself and be in relationship with others who may not like what I'm doing or how I'm being. That's, I mean, you have to excommunicate people from your life, but it might have to shift your relationships. And that's okay. It may not become deeper. We can't change others, right? We can't make anyone act differently, but we can decide how we're going to be with ourselves. And I just think I have to say that because often people have the experience which you had, which is like a deepening and a loving relationship and a beautiful like expansion into honest relating, right? You showing up as your full authentic self and someone else seeing that, and that brings you closer, right? And sometimes people are mad. They're like, what the heck, you know? So I just want to say that.
I know, I love that so much. And like, to be honest, it didn't just go like from A to B. There was this process, but
Yeah.
I can totally see that. So for me, it wasn't like people were like, what? Like, what?
Yeah.
You're acting weird. Like, why are you saying this? What's wrong with you?
Uh-huh.
Like, um, well, it's been a process, and totally lucky for me. I mean, the people close to me are super open and interested and loving. But I love what you shared, and it's so true. This process can just look wildly different from person to person, and I
Yeah.
think totally people can get really caught up in like, oh, like her relationships went well, oh, she left her job or she got a relationship or whatever. What it looks like the inside job is like the same, but then how that like plays out into your world can look so different. And really, just like you said, having it's like having your own back. And that's so interesting because like before I found the mind body and I was like at my second most rock bottom in my life,
Mm.
and I'd had a couple of car accidents and a relationship breakdown and a suicide. And I kept repeating, I was like, I feel like no one has my back. I feel like no one has my back. I really felt like the world did not have my back. No one, no doctors, my family had turned on me, and you know, in their own way. And all my friends had kind of disappeared because they were a bit like done with me.
Yeah.
And not they were just tired, you know, fatigued.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I really had that loop going. I was like, no one has my back, no one has my back. And I've had some clients also share the same thing, this feeling. I love what you shared because it really is about having your own back. And if there are people, friends, anyone that you connect with, when you are in a deeper connection with yourself, then that connection can be so authentic and deeper. But then for sure, the reality is some people can really fall away, um and I guess you kind of have to choose what you want.
And I think we can make peace with that, right? We can decide, right? But I think that if the direction you're going does not align with the direction someone else wants you to go, but you want to be going in that direction, then they can leave your life and that's okay, right? And that's easier said than done. I'm not saying people are happy about it. I'm not saying that's an easy choice to make. I'm saying there's no one else who will be in your life forever except for you. And I think once I understood that, it became a little bit easier to accept that I had to make choices for myself and my well-being, or my body would do it for me. I remember when I read the book When the Body Says No by Gabor Mate, and I read it and I was like, oh no. Like, I don't have a choice, is what it felt like. I always had a choice. I could always choose to stay sick. That was a choice. I could make that choice. I didn't want to. I wanted to choose to be well and I wanted to choose to step into myself. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was sick and tired of suppressing every part of me to try and fit into a mold that I didn't even create. And that took, by the way, this is like a 4-year journey, well, 4.5 years. It took a long time. This is not an overnight process. There's a lot of up and downs in that process. And I think I'd like to be very, very real about the journey, because sometimes we hear about people's successes, like they found mind body approach and then like, boom, they were healed. And if some folks have that experience, amazing. I find those are rare. And it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong if that's not your experience. And I just want to say that that's really the path forward, is to be on the path forward as long as it takes. Even if it takes years, I by year 2.5, I wasn't sure I'd get here. 2.5 years in, I wasn't sure I'd get here, but I kept going. And I can't know how long anyone's path will be. I'm sure you'd say the same thing. And at some point I stopped caring, not really, not truly, of course, but always wanted to be pain-free. But I stopped caring in a way where I was like, I'm going to live my life anyway. Symptoms will come, they'll go, they'll do their thing. But I'm no longer putting my life on hold until I'm pain-free, because I may never be pain-free. I'm going to choose to believe that I will, but no one can guarantee that for me. So now what? And that's really when my life changed. And then eventually my pain changed. So, yeah.
I love that. I feel like that was just so powerful. And I remember reading Steve Ozanich's book, and he said 2 years of aha moments, and I was healed. And I was like, 2 years, okay, 2 years, and I was like clinging on to, and everyone does the same thing. They're like, how long will it take? And I did, right? I just say, how long? Um, and I did have like quite a dramatic start off, which I'm glad I had, because I didn't have any coaches or teachers or anything back then, but I did the like 2 weeks of reading books, and I healed my IBS of 30 years in that short amount of time. So I had this real solid evidence. I was like, yes, I knew it. I found it. This works. Like, of 30 years of trying everything all over the world, I was like, boom, I got it. But that was not the end of this story. Like, that was really just the beginning. That was really just the first step. And my symptom, I got the most gnarly panic and insomnia, like all kinds of things ramped up. But I just freaking knew. I was just like, do you know what? Even though I was wildly uncomfortable, and part of me was still super scared, obviously. I'm like, what the hell's going on? But there was this like real knowing, like this deep knowing. I was like, this is my nervous system. And the very fact that things just got wildly worse because I started to do this work is only more the proof. You're only proving it more to me. And I'm just gonna walk around and live my life. And I swear to you, if you saw me, I did not look well. I was not sleeping. I was like swollen eyes. All kinds of things were happening in my body. And I was just like, yeah, I'm going here, I'm going there, I'm eating this ice cream, I'm meeting friends, I'm doing this, just got to rest. And everyone's like, are you okay? Like, what's going on? And I'm like, yeah, I just have an stimulated nervous system, and I'm calming it down, and I stopped talking to people, I stopped connecting through my symptoms. And it was like wild. It was totally wild. But I was just so done with whatever I'd been doing for 30 years. And I was just so all in on this nervous system story. I was just like, no, whatever you're doing, however uncomfortable and scary. And then for sure, there was just like these real moments where I was like, what the fuck? Like, how long is this going to go on for? Am I 60% healed? Am I 70% healed? Am I 80%?
Right? Yeah. The numbers.
Am I 20% now? Am I even healed? Actually, is it even working? What even is this? I'm done.
Right.
I'm done. I'm out. Like,
And it's like, what does healed look like? Is it you never have symptoms again? Is it like you have to be pain-free all the time? Like, people get so caught up. And I fully understand, because I was the same way in the beginning, right? Like, I was like, I'm sorry, fully healed is never having pain ever again. And like, you never have a symptom of any kind ever again, which is like not being a human. Like, humans get symptoms. And those of us who have had a lot of mind body symptoms, our body tends to communicate to us through symptoms. And it's okay if even after you're quote unquote fully healed, you once in a while have a little communication come through. It's to know what to do about it, right? It's to know what that means and not to panic and spiral and go into the whole story of, oh no, not again, right? Which if it does, how human of us, self-compassion all the way, right? But I just have to say, like, it is so helpful, I think, hearing your story, and I can relate where your IBS is my low back pain. So I had chronic low back pain for 3.5 years before I had chronic pelvic pain. And I read John Sarno's healing back pain book. I mean, 2.5 years into my healing journey. And then pretty soon after that, healed. But back pain felt different because like the book was about back pain. If you looked into it, there were so many stories about back pain. I was like, okay, back pain, I believe. And that came pretty quickly. Pelvic pain felt harder because it was like, there's so many organs, there's so many tissues, there's so many hormonal, like there's a rabbit hole you can dive down on the physical lens that can keep you wrapped up for decades if you let it. And for me, I just at some point hit a wall where I was like, this isn't working. And I had evidence of having had the back pain and been like, something that felt so physical, that had a scan with a bulging disc where I had weakness and pain and nerve pain, and I could barely walk, and that healed through a mind body approach. Perhaps I can do this too, right? Like I had some evidence of I've kind of done this before. Pelvic pain to me felt harder, but I had evidence of mind body healing for very real physical symptoms. And having that evidence helped me get through, I think.
Yeah, I love that because I always say to people as well, like everyone, or not everyone, but a lot of people are thinking like, oh, they're not talking about my symptom, or like my condition isn't on the list of conditions. And that's what it was like for me too. I had a lot of like period pain and period issues, and they weren't on the list, and hormonal issues, and they weren't on they weren't in healing back pain, and they weren't on like the curable app. But once I just had the information, I really just knew in my bones. And I knew because I also studied like biology and anatomy and physiology. I'm really passionate about that. So I just really knew on a science level and in an intuitive level that this was it. And like I knew that the nervous system was connected to everything, and that if so it can really manifest in other people, in you, in your body, in a totally different way. But to listen, like, so for me, even though I wasn't listening to people with period pain or my specific symptoms, what they were sharing, I always listened to the back pain things. I never had back pain in my life, but always listened to them, because what they were sharing was the same thing. They were talking about personality traits that I had. They were talking about things they were told, like that I was told. So I really always encourage people to they're like, you can go around, you can spend the next 10 years of your life looking for someone to confirm to you that, like, oh yeah, that has a mind body root, or that has emotional stress connection. Or you can just kind of like try it out yourself. Like if this resonates, if the personality traits, if the other things are resonating, then, like I always say, like, be your own science experiment. Be like, oh cool, that healed or whatever.
I said that to a client earlier today. That exact same line. Yeah, I totally agree. I do think that, yes. I mean, listening to anybody's healing story, regardless of symptoms, has helped me, no matter what they had, whether I had it or not. I do have to say that my brain is real stubborn. And it was very fixated on not having heard a pelvic pain healing story. This is back when this happened. And I remember the way that I decided that I would heal from pelvic pain was I heard one person's story on a podcast, and I was like, okay, it's possible. And then I found in Dr. Schubner's book, Unlearn Your Pain, in his list of diagnoses that are often mind body was vulvodynia. And I was like, oh, here we go. Right. So I did think the affirmation was helpful. It's not required. I think that's important to say. Like, it's not required. For me, it was very helpful just to hear that, like, okay, somebody thinks that these symptoms could be mind body and often are mind body. But it certainly is not required. And sometimes waiting for the evidence and waiting for someone to affirm that for you, you'll be waiting the rest of your life. And that's just really challenging. And if you've done all the things, you've gone to all the doctors, ruled everything out, and quote unquote, nothing has worked, truly there's no harm in trying the mind body approach, regardless of your confirmed belief or not.
I love that. And I have had clients who thought, is it too late in life? Am I too old to heal? Right. So that was their fear. We all have all different fears that this won't work for us for some specific reason. And they found it helpful to find recovery stories of people who are older than them. And one of my clients said that she found a recovery story of a woman in her 90s who's back playing tennis after like decades of not playing any sport or anything. So for sure, I had mixed feelings with the recovery stories, and I actually hated them because when I first found the mind body connection, people were like, so I like was married and bought my house and had a career, and then I got a pain in my shoulder for like a year, and I found the mind body connection, and now I'm healed and my life is better. And I was like, that is not my experience by any stretch. And so I know that some people do get kind of like can get triggered or upset by the recovery stories, and that's totally valid too. It's like, find some recovery story out there that resonates with you and just listen to that over and over again and ignore the rest or whatever. Just find your
1,000%. I have a client who like listens to one podcast, one episode on repeat. That's the one thing that she likes. I'm like, girl, do it. That's great. Like, you don't have to listen to anything. You don't have to read anything. Anything that feels bad for you, leave it. Don't do it. It's fine, right? Like, you get to curate your own journey. And as far as coaches go, right, there's a bunch of us. If you don't like how someone talks about something, listen to somebody else, right? Like, you're not going to miss the key, the missing link from one person. First of all, there isn't a key or missing link. It's really what I'm trying to say. But I think there's that insidious thought where it's like, if I don't listen to everyone, I'm going to miss it, that one thing. And what I've learned is there is not the one thing. There is not the one thing. It is many things, and also kind of like one thing, which is just you keep having your own back, be self-compassionate, and reduce fear of pain or symptoms.
That's literally it. Like, that's it. Totally. And sometimes I think that our brains like can get tired of listening to one person. And like, maybe if you've been like following me for ages and you're bored of me and my voice and my same old story, just like follow Rachel for a while and listen to her. It's like we're literally saying the same thing, but it helps for the brain. You're like, no, I don't know if I trust her anymore. She doesn't understand me or something. You just find someone else. And they're like, mostly across the board, anyone who I interview, all my friends like you that I connect with, I know, like, just like you said, reducing fear, self-compassion,
And
and
live your life.
live
Yeah.
your life. Exactly. That's
Yeah.
literally it. That's the secret sauce, the secret
That's the
formula.
skeletal framework. And from there, you can go wherever you want. Well, those are the three main tenets, right? And that's really what I think people kind of get frustrated by. They're like, oh, it sounds so simple. And I always say simple does not mean easy, right? Like, simple, yes, the framework is simple. The implementation and action does not feel easy when you have these terrifying symptoms for long periods of time and your life has gotten teeny tiny, and it feels very overwhelming to take any action in that direction.
And you've zero experience in self-compassion, which is the whole entire thing. And also getting back to your life or living your life is the very thing that's terrified you, that you've turned your back on or whatever. So it's hugely impossible almost. If you do it on your own, then that's amazing, that's so cool. But yeah, it's so super simple, which I love. I love simple things, I love effective things. I'm super lazy. I just want to like lounge around like a cat all day and just do like one or two things in a day. I'll be like fine. But but yeah, changing that paradigm and really stepping into a new world with in on all levels. Yeah, it's not easy. So if you're doing it, then like go you, like keep going, keep doing it, keep taking support, and we got your back. Also, myself and Rachel, we're here for you.
100%. Here, here.
Amazing. Well, it's been so, so nice hanging out with you, Rachel, and getting to know you. And I will leave all the links and etc. that anyone, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, they can do that. And is there anything else you want to share before we finish up?
Really, I just want to say, like, cultivating hope is a practice. And you don't have to believe 100% all the time to keep going and have your own back all the way through.
I
That's
love,
all.
yeah, I love that. I love that because you're not gonna feel like you believe in it all the time. You're not gonna even feel like it's working all the time. And
Yeah, healing isn't linear. I think sometimes people think, oh no, if I don't believe 100%, it's not going to work. And it's like no one believes 100% until you get there. And even then, they're not quite sure they believe. So that shouldn't stop you.
totally. Sometimes I'm like, what the fuck is
Yeah,
going on?
what are we doing?
Like, it's wild.
Yeah, thank you
Um,
so much for having me. This was so lovely.
Yay. Okay, cool. Well, I'll let you go. Enjoy your day in beautiful Manhattan, and we will talk again.
Sounds great.